I am here with three fellas down under. We have had a chance to chat a little offline, and now we're going to talk about an event that took place just last weekend in the human-powered vehicle racing scene. I think you're going to find it amazing what these fellas and others have done. So let's get into it, first of all, by maybe some introductions. So Andrew, Kyle, Tim, could you introduce yourselves, please, one at a time?
Hi, Andrew Connolly, washed up old ex-Ironman triathlete who turned to human-powered racing probably 5 or 6 years ago, and then got sucked into these world record attempts by the lure of riding at over 60k an hour for 24 hours.
All right, and Tim?
Yeah, I've been doing this since high school. I got pretty interested in this stuff around 2004, building these bikes, and been kind of building and developing them ever since, and just kind of chasing this dream of building bikes that can go fast for a really long period of time.
All right, and Tim is the builder then, and another racer, Kyle. Kyle, tell us a little about yourself.
Hey, I'm Kyle. I've been involved in HPV racing since I was like primary school. Happened to meet Tim a fair few years ago, and started at a much shorter event with a 1 hour, and ultimately worked up to a 24-hour attempt on the weekend, and just enjoy, I suppose, testing my body, and just enjoy the experience.
Very nice. All right. So my viewers will know that I have this thing for Pedal Prix, this amazing HPV racing that goes on in parts of Australia. We've had the racing people on before to talk about it, and I understand that it did have a bit to do with the beginnings of some of your experience with HPV. Andrew, specifically, I know. Could you each quickly tell us how has Pedal Prix affected your entry into HPV?
I'm actually on the other side on your screen. So my son raced with school. So it's a massive event over in Victoria, specifically, also South Australia. My son raced with school, and I was that guy in the pits. Most people half the people there are probably just trying to have a good time, and then half the people are trying to go fast. And I was that dad who was like, you need to pace yourself. The fastest way to get a good 1 hour is even pacing and all this. Yeah, I was just that guy in the pits, and then all of a sudden, one of the other crews said, "Oh, by the way, you realise that we've got some adults who race outside of these events." I go, "Okay, I could be convinced of that one." So I sort of got sucked into it by the fact that my son was racing with the school, and really trying to stay in front of him for as long as I could, which over the short stuff didn't last very long. But fortunately, being old, I've been able to go long and stay in front of him for a little bit. So, very much through my son and my son's school, and then sort of sideways into a community team after that.
Very nice. And Tim, you have a special connection to Pedal Prix as well. Yeah, you've been involved with making the racers. So go ahead, tell us about it.
Yeah, look, I've been building these things since about 2004. That one behind me is one of my favouriteest bikes in the world. I wanted to do Pedal Prix when I was in high school, but just never had the opportunity. I wasn't quite in the right group of people in my high school. It isn't a problem for me at all. No, I love those guys. But I spent the better part of 10, 12 years developing bikes and this guy here, and we were incredibly proud to have won that in 2011. And as it was, we beat these guys down here in 2011, and then somehow, Kyle and one of his other compatriots, Ned, both raced with me with the Phantom speed bikes. So long history, 10, 12 years of building and racing these things in Pedal Prix. Kyle.
Great. And Kyle, go ahead, Kyle. What did it have to do with your racing?
Yeah, I've been racing this sport, the Pedal Prix, since I was probably 12 years old, maybe younger, and just working my way through. I was the guy that used to struggle to ride 40 minutes, and I'd be coming into the pits cramping and So I think for me, as it was always a challenge. Like I wanted to ride faster, I wanted to ride longer, I wanted to win more races. It was quite a competitive thing for myself, and it really sort of ticked that box for me. And then I happened to meet Tim, and I rode his speed bike for an hour, and I just couldn't believe how fast this thing was. And we went on and did some really cool things, over the years. And it happened to be one of my good friends, Ned, was attempting a 24-hour, and it just didn't go to plan. And if it had of, which it was on its way, like I don't think we would be sitting here today, because he was going to achieve that back in, I'm not sure, I think it was 2016 or 17 maybe. Yeah. Then, I just had this goal, like, can I go from the kid who could only ride 40 minutes, to riding 24 hours? And it was such a big goal for so many years of mine to just see how far I could push myself.
Let's start focusing in a little bit about this past weekend and the event itself. First of all, let's talk about the venue. So, Tim, maybe I'll ask you, tell me where this was held and a little bit about the venue and maybe its history, whatever you think fits.
Yeah, sure. So for people that do these things, you'll realise that it's pretty much impossible to do these things now on small velodromes. There's 2 to 3 automotive test circuits in Australia that are really the only 2 or 3 locations where you can build, where you can ride these things at the speed that you need to ride at. And I've been fortunate to go and visit all 3 of those locations. I visited the Lang Lang Proving Ground that was owned by Holden at the time in 2009. We spent the better part of 10 to 12 years at the Ford Proving Ground. I'm incredibly fortunate. I think we're all incredibly thankful for the opportunity to go race there pro bono. The surface is good, but not amazing at Ford. I went and visited the Anglesey Proving Ground. Probably even worse, and a lot of elevation change at Anglesey, not really appropriate for a 24-hour attempt. And then recently I managed to, through some of my personal connections, to find an avenue back into the Holden Proving Ground that's now owned and was sold to VinFast, a Vietnamese EV developer. And it was very clear that we weren't going to be able to race there pro bono. So myself and Andrew and Kyle had already agreed that we were going to I was going to send 2 of my bikes to Germany and go and support them. And both Andrew and Kyle had already in principle said, yeah, look, let's go do this. So look, why is that important? Well, that's quite expensive to send a couple of bikes to Germany to go and do that. And I kind of went, all right, for about the same prices I can send 2 bikes to Germany, we can actually go hire Lang Lang. And so was able to negotiate an opportunity with Darren Smales, the facility manager there, to hire the event. And it's basically it's a 4.7 kilometer circuit. It's pancake flat. It does have, though, a bushland island on the inside that there's a population of native kangaroos there that you'll see as time goes on that becomes a significant part of this story. But the surface is just so smooth. I visited the Alderhoven test track, ATC, in Germany in 2016. I also visited that same year the Dekra test track. And I would say that the Lang Lang facility is definitely comparable and probably faster than the ATC test track, but about equivalent to Dekra. With Dekra doesn't have any animals to run into, so
certainly not marsupials. Yes, that is the case. Just to close the loop, Tim, on the you mentioned maybe sending a couple of the bikes and the guys to Germany. Was that for an event? Was that for a world championship? What was that? What did you?
Yeah, look, the German crew and I should say more than just the German, and neighbouring kind of countries, they obviously have a huge culture over there doing this, and they've run a couple of events now. They ran hugely successful event in 2023 that I think was probably plagued by a few organisational challenges that they'll talk to. They ran again in 2024. They had 2 people race then, and they have a significant number of people that are planning to, I say race, but to attempt to attempt the same kind of records that we've been attempting in about, I think, July this year. So that's coming up pretty soon for them, and obviously they have some new marks that they're pending ratification, but some new marks that our guys have all set that they're going to have to beat now.
Yeah, that sounds good. Including, are you talking about like Ruben Stutz, the German that?
Yeah. I'm in Milan. Of course, I'm incredibly respectful of Ruben's attempt, but the rules of IHPVA and WHPVA are quite clear, and you're not allowed to have backup bikes there. And unfortunately for Ruben, his main bike had problems. He jumped into a spare bike, and my reading of that is that's not within the rules of IHPVA and WHPVA. And so with Walker, it clearly is acceptable to do that, and that's fine. That's a different style of record attempt.
So what we're about to talk about, these records that were achieved at Lang Lang, they need to be certified. Tell me the certifying bodies. Who will be certifying these? Okay,
so this event was run through AusHPV. That's the group that we have in Australia that governs these things. AusHPV falls under the WHPVA organisational structure, and so our primary point of validation is through WHPVA. Of course, I tend to subscribe to just submit it to the main world bodies, and both IHPVA and WHPVA have very, very similar and, in fact, almost identical rule sets. And so I have a good relationship with both of those organisations, and we're aiming to submit all of the records, the record of Andrew, the record of Kyle, and the record of Aidan. We'll be submitting those to both of those organisations. Their rule sets are available for anybody that wants to find them and have a look at them. The main things that I see that you need an automatic timing system with a certification that it's accurate to within 1 second, and that certification takes a few hoops to jump through, and there's been teams, I think, that have failed on that, even though they've made good records. And you also need a distance certification of the course, and so I want to talk to and thank Dom Daly, a committee member of AusHPV. He's a formerly a land surveyor, and he came down and he spent the whole weekend. He's a HPV rider as well, but he gave up his weekend. He drove down from Sydney, and he spent the whole weekend out on his feet surveying the course for us. So amazing work by Dom to come down and do that for us free of charge. So to submit these things, you need a survey of your course, and you literally just count up the number of laps that you did in the allocated time. You figure out the percentage of your last lap that was completed within the time length. You multiply that number of laps by the surveyed time length, and that's how you arrive at your final distance. And some people don't understand that and perhaps get upset when their Garmin says they got a longer distance, but that's how you calculate them. It's the same for everybody, and that's the process that we have to go through now to submit our records to both of those bodies.
Right. I mean, it's all in service of making sure that everyone's playing by the same rules. So Absolutely. If you're comparing runs, then you need to make sure you're comparing the same thing, no matter where you are. So it makes good sense. All right. So now that we've talked about how these records are certified and such, let's talk about the records themselves. So what records were being attempted?
I think I'm happy to jump in there, Tim. I think all three of us were trying for all three records. So the big three for us were the 12-hour, the 1,000 kilometres, and the 24. And I think it would also be fair to say that the 24 was the main goal, but we always had in the back of our mind that there was still also the possibility of the other two, the 12 and the 1,000 along the way.
Fellas, if you'll tell me about your racing experience over the weekend, how it went, the highlights, the lowlights. Just give me the story of your racing this weekend.
Yeah, so I mean, it's sort of quite hard to make riding consistently at 64 kilometres an hour sound exciting for 11 hours on end, but that's really what it was about. So started off the line probably a little bit late in the day, to be honest, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and did 4 laps and was going really, really well, and then got called back in because the timing chip wasn't working. So, I had to actually get out and restart the event. Didn't really change a hell of a lot, to be honest. It basically gave me an opportunity to drink again, stretch again, and so forth, and then realised that those first 4 laps were probably a little bit too fast. So it did change the way that I paced the next 15 hours or so. So I hopped back in, started lapping at pretty much 65k an hour. So I need to do my maths, but that's pretty much 40 miles an hour for those using freedom units. So holding that pretty consistently at around about 200 watts or so, and a nice steady low heart rate, about 110-ish, 110 to 115. So it was sort of all in the acceptable range of where I wanted to be. And really, not a lot happens after that for the first 7 or 8 hours or so. We had Aidan already on the track, and Kyle joined me about an hour and a half later. So we actually had the 3 of us going around. I barely saw Kyle. We were lapping at a very similar speed. But I'd see Aidan quite a bit. So Aidan was in a materially different trike that I was in, and it would be accurate for me to say that a better athlete in probably a slower car, but so I was passing him fairly regularly, pretty much every 50 minutes, and it was sort of my one highlight every hour. I'd get to see Aidan and say, just sort of mark it off and so forth. So 50 minutes, and then an hour and 40 I'd see him, and 2:30 and so forth. So it was going really well. So after 7 hours, I'd taken 5.5 litres on board, and I basically completely run out of fuel, and called the pits to say I'm coming in, and then halfway around the last lap on my pit lap, and by this time it's 8 o'clock at night, I got taken out by a kangaroo. So a little bit like a movie jump scare. Didn't see it at all until it knocked me over, but it had been up the track and came and jumped into the front of the car and spun the car around and slid along the track at whatever it was, 63k an hour, and then into the grass on the side, and then lying a little bit like an upturned turtle, and tried to get myself out of it and back on the track. And we touched on the pedal Prix stuff earlier on, but the reality is that crashes in pedal Prix are relatively common. Crashes in the speed bikes, much less so. But having crashed enough times in my life, you just realise you just got to get out, get on with it, tip your bike back up again, make sure it's facing the right way. So I had a few issues where I was completely disoriented, and I actually lined my car up pointing back up the track in the wrong direction when I first got there, until I think Kyle came past and I realised, hang on, I better go in the same direction as them. Hop back in and then rode into the pits, and I don't know if you've got I think you might have some pictures there of all the scratches down the side of the car. But yeah, it costed a little bit of time, about probably 5 minutes all up, 3 minutes in the car. They're terrible at accelerating, so I lost probably another minute there and then another minute in the pits trying to check it. So I lost a little bit of distance because of the roo, but other than that, not too bad. So yeah, so the first 7 and a bit hours, I covered, I think, about 450 kilometres or something. So really pleased. Heart rate was good. Hopped back out and did another about 5 hours, and again was still going quite well, still averaging comfortably over 60, 61, 62 k an hour by this point, and still managing to sneak past Aidan every now and again, but it wasn't 50 minutes now. It's sort of every hour and 20, around 30 and so forth. So clearly I was slowing down a little bit, and he wasn't. And again, I barely saw Kyle. In fact, I reckon I didn't see Kyle for about 4 or 5 hours there, despite being on the same track. Came in at 12 hours, about 12 and 10. I knew that the 12-hour record was a thing, so I wanted to make sure I didn't have a second pit stop. And I had a pretty good mark. It was 736, I think, on the Garmin when I went through 12 hours. And it gets magically rounded down by the surveying process, but it was still fortunately over. Sorry, my dog's just at my feet here. It was still fortunately over the 60k an hour mark, which was a bit of a barrier that I'd made it up, I guess, but in my head it was a sort of a thing that I wanted to be able to do, stay over that. And then after 12 hours, things didn't go so well. So I probably had another 2 good hours, so probably 14 good hours all up. Was still well on track, like to beat the 1,000k and so forth. But I kind of knew I was in a bit of trouble in that my heart rate was low. So I was basically getting to a point where my heart rate kept dipping below 100. This car was still incredible. So the fact that I could have a heart rate of 95 and still be doing sort of 57k an hour was pretty remarkable. But Aidan started passing me, and I thought, ooh, I'm in a bit of trouble here. And then at about 15 and a half hours or something, I came into the pit and I said I needed to sleep. By this time, it's probably 4 a.m. in the morning, and really starting to struggle to stay awake. So probably the biggest problem was I just needed my nana nap. I was tired. I really needed to go to sleep. I tried to sleep and couldn't, and eventually they hauled me out of the car in about 16 and a half hours. I'd done 930k. Aiden was long gone. He'd unlapped himself about 15 times by then. Kyle was well in front of me, and then my day was done.
Well, that is just amazing, Andrew. I mean, nothing there to be ashamed of at all. All right, let's go to Kyle. Kyle, can you tell us about your experience racing that day?
Yeah, so it's such a blur. Like, to think how long 24 hours is. Like, I ponder memories of the day, and there's not a lot that I do actually remember. Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, for me, I didn't have a great sort of week leading into the event. I got a bit of a head cold. I had some, personal stress happening because I travelled across Australia quite a long way to come to this, and I just didn't think I was on a good week. And that's one thing, you train for months for events, and sometimes that happens, and you run with it. But I didn't get in the bike till a little bit after 2 p.m., which was already sort of a little bit unplanned, but I just had to get on with the job. And yeah, from the get-go, I just knew based on my data, I wasn't on a good day. I had a really high heart rate for not a lot of power, and in previous testing in the bike, that wasn't a good sign. So I did the opposite. I turned my screens off. Like I just zone out. I listen to music and I try and remember why I'm doing this. And yeah, I went through a lot and suffered a lot. And over the course of, I think, 8 hours, I started to find my groove a bit. And I know that 24 hours is a long time. Like you can go through really low periods, and if you mentally hold on, you can come out the other side and find yourself again. So I did that quite a bit. Messaged and chatted to my pit crew, Nelson, quite a bit. And he was very good for me. He was great. And I think I can't really remember. We attempted a bottle change on just a traditional bike, and Nelson nearly ended up on his head. So yeah, I ended up just doing pit stops every about 5 hours. I was bang on with my nutrition plan, which was mainly just through fluids. I had a couple of solid foods here and there, and just some caffeine milk here and there. And I got to, I think it was about midnight, and I started to experience some fogging. So I did slow down a bit, and the bike did get a little bit slower, but I was still feeling okay. And then not long after that cleared, but some wind started picking up, and that was quite challenging to negotiate some wind gusts. I think above, in kilometers, I think they're above 60 kilometers an hour, and they're very random. So you're riding around in the dark, and next minute the bike's being thrown left or right, and it's very hard to stay focused for such a long period of time. And a lot of the time when I ride, I just relax and I let go, and I'm not gripping the bike. I'm just in a zone, but you're literally holding the steering, just waiting for the gust, because you kind of know maybe where it might come or which way it might come from. But that was a big mental battle, but it actually kept me awake really well. So happened to break the 1,000-kilometer record. Not that I had any interest in that. I was coming for the 24, and I think I got to nearly around the 20-hour mark, and mentally I was gone. Physically, I was okay. Like, I was still pushing good power. My heart rate had settled. It was just the mental battle of, look, Aidan's going very well. He's going to finish soon. I'm not going to finish till 2 p.m. And I just decided, unfortunately, that, look, this isn't for me today, and I've got to live with that. But, I'm really proud of, where I came from as an athlete to be able to attempt and do such a feat. So it was a mega ride for me to overcome those things. And, I'm just happy to sit here saying, like, I did what I did, and I can walk away being proud of that.
And you absolutely should. No question. Tim, let's finish up here with a couple things. I wanted to get your thoughts on what you saw from the sidelines watching these guys race. But I do want to quickly talk a little bit more specifically about the Phantoms. So tell us a little bit about what these guys were actually racing. I noticed Andrew was calling it the car. I say bike or a velomobile, but whatever, you build these things. Can you tell us about the Phantoms that they rode?
So, look, I've been developing these bikes since about 2005, largely based on a NACA 66 and later a 67 profile with a 21 camber profile, which basically just means that the widest point of the bike is 21% of the length. So developed this NACA 66 bike called the Phantom TT. Later, we realised that we could make it quite a bit smaller. We developed a second bike called the Phantom Mini T with the help of a gentleman called Wade Edwards. So we built these bikes based on a NACA 67 aerofoil, which is probably the easiest way to pick up an aerofoil shape that works for a human-powered vehicle that is very, very aerodynamic. So the thing about the NACA series foils, in particular the NACA 6 series foils, they were designed for extensive natural laminar flow. So I think a lot of your listeners might know about laminar flow, but in terms of the friction of airflow flowing over the surface of the part, it'll start off as laminar flow. So over the front half of the bike, you'll have laminar flow over the front half. And then when you get to the widest point, it'll trip to turbulent flow down to the back. And so the rule of thumb that we use is that turbulent flow has about 4 times as much skin friction drag as what laminar flow does. And so what you want is a very specific shape that accelerates the flow around the front half of the bike. And the bikes that I've developed are designed specifically for that. And so very, very low coefficient of drag on these things. The bikes that I have pretty much broken, low speed world record for a multi-track for a 3-wheeled bike. The 1-hour record. Kyle had the 6-hour record for a while. We've now well and truly got the 12-hour and the 1,000-kilometer record. It's a really accomplished bike. We picked up the super low rolling resistance tires about 2016. The Michelin blue tires. I do have the Michelin black tires as well, the radial tires. They're still sitting in my cupboard, very expensive tires. But there are some challenges with working with those that we've not been able to resolve. So we've been running the Michelin blue tires now for several years. You can get a hold of them. You just need to pay attention to the Ginkgo website. I think the 35s are very hard to come by at the moment, but there's plenty of 44s around. And I set the whole bike up around that tire. I knew that was the tire we needed. I designed the bike to be just big enough to fit a rider. And in fact, the just big enough in the Mini T was probably too small, and not probably, but definitely was too small for Andrew. In Andrew's attempt in 2022, he started in the Mini T at similar speed, 64 k's an hour, but he had COVID on that instance and couldn't eat. Anybody who does this stuff for long enough knows that the 24-hour is really an eating race with some cycling thrown in for fun. Anybody who's in the ultra endurance will know about that, and will also know about type 1, 2, and 3 fun. And that was definitely a type 2 event for us that year. Built this one bike, and then Andrew needed a bike that was a little bit bigger, and given the so many train wrecks that we've had in the past, I wanted to build a bike a little bit bigger that fit Andrew better, and so I built this bike called the Plus 24. It has 24 millimeters of extra room in both shoulders, and the overall bike width grew by plus 24, and it was for the 24-hour record. So that's the naming there. And, in all respects, I rode the Plus 24 for 2 or 3 laps after Andrew was finished. The bikes feel incredibly similar, very similar chassis, slightly different drivetrains. The drivetrain on Andrew's bike's probably 5 watts faster, but the fairing is just, I figured it out, as 1.6% bigger. So on balance, I think both bikes were almost identical in terms of their power versus speed profile. We got a bit unlucky with our data on the weekend, so we don't have precise data to share, unfortunately. I probably will eventually share a power versus speed profile for the world to look at with my bikes. We're now at a bit of a crossroads. We've kind of put as much as we can into this, and I'm going to find it difficult to mount more challenges the way that we have. And I'm now ready to make my bikes available to anybody who wants to use them. So there's an incredible opportunity here. It's a fantastic opportunity for anyone around the world who wants to get into one of these bikes and have a shot at these records. There's still some people will say 58, 57 that Aidan did is amazing, but that can still be considered low-hanging fruit. There's the world outright 200-meter record. That's we've proven that this bike is faster than completely overzealous and all overzealous at 1 hour and at low altitude. So there's an opportunity for somebody out there. Get in touch. There's a real chance here for someone else to pick that up.
So you think there's a little something left in those bikes for these and other riders as well, which is great. All right, Tim, I wanted to give you a quick chance to talk about what you saw at the race. We've heard the stories from the fellas here, but anything else you wanted to remark upon from being from the outside looking at these guys racing? Yeah,
look, I had an amazing weekend. The history of these things that were done can be incredibly cruel and brutal for those that do it. They just know that on the surface, all people see is the record that you achieve, but what they don't see is 10, 15 years of pain and suffering and records that didn't go to plan. And so I was amazed by both Andrew and Kyle's performances for different reasons. Andrew and Kyle are both different characters, and I, having seen so much bad luck, and then we had the marshals calling in, one of the Phantom bikes has crashed, and I just about cried. I just thought, here we go again. This is so unfair. And then Andrew rides into the pits like 5 minutes later, going, "Oh, Mr. Kangaroo, that was incredibly inconsiderate of you." And those were literally his words. I think we might have that on video somewhere. We had medics check him over. They said, "Yeah, you're good to go." He was demanding his food, and then he rode off into the darkness to claim that spot for himself in history. And that was amazing. And then Kyle, of course, was amazing as well. He had and self-confessed, he had a bad day in the bike, and to be able to, you've started the day on bad terms. I didn't necessarily help with, the bikes are a bit late coming together, and that made it mentally challenging for both of the guys. Particularly so for Kyle, and he suffered. He could have pulled out at 6 hours and reasonably said, "I'm done," but Kyle he kept going. And yes, he was very vocal about the challenges that he had, but he had a great support crew. Both guys did. I was amazed with the support that both guys had, and Kyle just kept suffering. And I think it's a real testament that he kept going, and he had to keep going. And he's ended up with a 1,000-kilometer world record as a result of that, as his ability to just keep suffering. And two just amazing stories, each slightly different. And I'm just incredibly amazed and thankful for the work that both Andrew and Kyle have both done.
I think you said it perfectly, and I'm right there with you. I'm amazed by what they've done and the stories that they've told. Let's finish up with look to the future then. Andrew and Kyle, are you crazy enough to try this again?
Yeah, so I don't know if you mentioned this. I'm 52. I describe myself as washed up, which I kind of feel a little bit. I feel old. I think we all kind of still at 20 in our heads, but the body, I do recognise that it is 52 years old. I've lost maybe 10% of top end power, which I think probably hurts me now. So I personally, I won't do a 24-hour event again. And most of that comes to the fact that I actually don't think I was born with the 24-hour gene. We haven't really spoken about this bit, but there are people who just have this gene in them who can race through the night. And it's not just in HPVs; it's in all, mountain biking does it, ultra marathoning, adventure racing, and so forth. And I've seen a lot of these people up close. They're incredible athletes, but they just appear to be born with this ability to race through the night. And I was tired. I felt like I failed over the weekend, not because of my age in this particular case, although it didn't help, but mostly because of the fact that I think I'm actually just not a 24-hour athlete. And if we just mention briefly Aiden Lampe from Trisled, who ended up with the 24-hour record, which no doubt you'll speak with him later, but he's very much born with this gene. The guy is an animal, and quite incredibly, negative split the 24-hour race, which I just think is astonishing. So I won't be doing it, but I think the most interesting question is if someone with the 24-hour gene, like an Aidan, paired up with a car like the one that I was in, what could happen there? Because that I think is the next frontier. So on that one briefly, the original record, the German record of 12:19, and I know it got extended unofficially to 12:60, but in my head, I didn't really respect that record. I respected the fact that someone had managed to go for 24 hours, but from a maths and physics point of view, it's not that great. You'd look at the power numbers that you need to be able to do, and we knew that a good car or a good rider would beat it, one or the other. And I think the outcome of Aiden's record over the 24 hours over this weekend is that that's no longer true. I think the case is now you're going to need a good rider and a good car. You're basically going to need both of them. The free improvements over the world record are gone now, and you're going to need someone of Aiden's caliber. And Kyle on a good day is certainly up there as well. But someone of that caliber in a car of Tim's quality, a car, trike, bike, velomobile, whatever it is, of Tim's quality. That's where we're going to need to be. But if you get that combination, I think 1,500 kilometres is possible. I had a brief chat with Aidan, and I think Aidan in the back of his mind asked the question, and I think this is a good one, is the 1,000 miles possible in 24 hours? And my response after this weekend, and I don't particularly rate myself as an athlete, but I was on track for close to 1,500 at the pace I was on. My response is that yes, it is. So 1,000 miles is possible, and it's going to require a great day, a great track, a really great 24-hour athlete, and an unbelievable car. But it's possible. 1,000 miles is possible.
All right, Kyle, how about you?
Yeah, I kind of have to walk away saying, I made about 20 hours and I didn't have a good day. Would I do it again? There's other things I want to do in my life. I've spent the better part of 20 years being an athlete, and there is part of me if it wasn't for the financial aspect and the time, I have to travel 20 hours, down to Victoria or overseas, or if the opportunity came, and the financial and my life was in the right place, I think I could do a much better attempt at 24. I'm definitely not a 24-hour athlete. Like I'm a very heavy sweater. I run at a very high temperature, and that's something I have to negotiate and train around. But
and you don't have the gene, apparently.
maybe I don't have the gene, but I fought, tooth and nail in my head and that's what I have. I might have negative thoughts, but like I won't give in and I've definitely got that part of me in me. So if it wasn't for the financial aspect, if someone said, "Hey Kyle, we're going to come and cover you for this, and let's go fly over here and do this," like I'd be all in. But I'm just ready for some other things in my life now, like not as an athlete that require time. And as Andrew mentioned, I'd love to see an incredible athlete, that's already done these amazing feats, and I can name a few off the top of my head, but it's really just, I'd love to see these bikes go to someone capable of that, and to seeing, just a testament to him as a builder, what is capable. But yeah, like I'm really happy, like I did everything I could, and if that opportunity came, sure, maybe, but I'd love to see it, crack over 1,500, and it'd be great to, follow along that journey.
Tim, I'm going to give you the last word here. Any final thoughts on this? I wanted to thank you for bringing the fellas to me and setting up this interview. I've enjoyed talking to you guys so much and learning about the 24-hour event that you guys raced and how hard you worked and everything that I've learned about racing today and running into kangaroos while racing. It's something I'd not even thought of. So, Tim, final words?
Yeah, look, really brief. I think Andrew and Kyle have been pretty concise about summing things up here. But again, just really thankful for the guys and for VinFast for the opportunity to race there. I will say, if people want to take a closer look at the images and the construction of everything that has been done, they can find a lot of that on my Facebook page, Phantom Speedbikes. That they can find that pretty easily. And thanks, Gary, for getting together with us for the opportunity just to have this kind of download of everything that we achieved over the weekend. So I'm in a good spot. I'm really happy. Thanks everybody.
All my pleasure, fellas. Thank you so much, Andrew, Kyle, Tim, for joining us on the Laid Back Bike Report today. I wish you all continued good luck in whatever you endeavor to do, racing or not. So I sure appreciate it. Have a good one. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
We are back down under. And here with me today are Ben, Jono, and Aidan. Guys, welcome to the Laid Back Bike Report.
Thanks for having us, Gary.
Hey, thank you.
All right. So I think we'll just get started, if we could, by having you guys introduce yourselves and say who you are and tell us a little bit about what parts you played in this race this past week.
I'm Ben, the owner of Trisled, the key protagonist, the guy who decided to kick off this party when it was offered to us by Oz HPV. And obviously not my first rodeo in doing records. So went in for another round, and obviously went very well for us.
I'm Jono. I work at Trisled doing design and production, and I've been getting this thing ready to actually do the attempt and test and get Aidan fitting in the bike over the last 3 months.
I'm Aidan, and I am usually just a bike mechanic by day. But for this one, I was the man inside the machine on the day, and just some legs.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more to it than that, Aidan. But we're going to get back to you on that. That's very humbly put. All right, let's go back to Ben if we could do that. Ben, can you maybe tell us briefly the backstory of this record attempt? How did it come about? How long in the planning and that sort of thing?
Sure. First of all, this is little overzealous. Our 2-time successful 24-hour record holder, which has literally been on the shelf for 15 years. And just towards the end of last year, some conversations with the guys at Oz HPV presented an opportunity to go to the Lang Lang Proving Ground, which is arguably, in fact, certainly the best place in Australia to attempt these kind of records. And I just initially went, oh, okay, that's very interesting, cool, glad it's happening. And then I guess I just started thinking about the opportunity and how we didn't get the opportunity 15 years ago to use this track, and not wanting to waste the opportunity again. How would this possibly happen? And about a month after that, I had a 3 a.m. moment, and I literally messaged Aidan. And Aidan and I are only just friends. We only just know each other. Well, we're better friends now, obviously. But at the time, I just knew Aidan, and I messaged him to see if he's interested, because he was the one person I could think of in the top of my head who would be an amazing engine for this. I thought he'd probably just say no, that'd be the end of it. I could get rid of this harebrained idea, move on, and just
Tell me to get back to work.
Yeah, get back to work. However, several days later, Aidan came back to me saying yes, and that was basically the beginning of what was about a 12-week whirlwind of making this happen.
We're going to delve into that for sure. Before we do, can we just lay out there for folks what exactly did Aidan do? What was the record attempt, and what were his numbers? Aidan, why not we ask you?
Yeah. So the attempt that we went for was the 24-hour solo world record there. So I think the previous official mark was 12:19 kilometers. And yeah, we went out there and exceeded our own expectations, and have got a calculated distance of 1347.342 kilometers.
To the 100th place. That's yeah. So
Are you sure?
That's amazing. Ben, he sounds very sure. Actually, we're going to get into what actually happened and how you got to that amazing number as well. But if we can, let's go back for a second to Ben and Jono and talk about that vehicle that's behind you, little overzealous. Ben, can you talk a little bit about that machine and describe it for folks who don't know exactly what it is and what went into making it, and why you thought that this was going to be the machine that Aidan could use to hit?
Sure. Overzealous really is one. There's actually a family of 6 bikes in the Overzealous family, which are all Trisled built, essentially record attempting machines, and the name Overzealous really just implies over the top. In other words, more than what we could really do for a customer bike or anything you use every day, and more just a research vessel, if you like, to really explore limits. Little Overzealous is the second oldest of the family at 15 years old, and as the name implies, Little is actually slightly smaller than the original Overzealous. And way back then, we calculated the original Overzealous wasn't quite capable of the 24-hour distance mark at the time. And so partnering up with Jeff Nielsen, the rider at the time, we actually literally cut Overzealous down the middle. We took 50 mil out of its middle and then brought it in and then reshaped it and remolded it. And here it is, Little Overzealous. It was successful in a 24-hour run then, and then was put on the shelf for 15 years, basically. But coming into this, we realised we had some tricks up our sleeve for some more potential for it. Perhaps I'll let Jono talk about that, though.
Yeah, so 15 years ago when it did get put on the shelf, it was running on, wheels, for one, is the first major change that's happened in 15 years. So it was on Continental GP 5000s, I think, or just Grand Prix, actually.
Yep.
They're quite skinny tyres, fast for the time. But 15 years has passed and all tyres at that level have got better. But obviously, the best tyres are a lot better than those tyres now. So there was that potential to move on, and then some smaller gains in, say, drivetrain improvements, like chain treatments, ergonomics, and then a huge chunk of gain in even athlete performance, which we can talk about separately. But yeah, so a lot of the work we've done is to bring the bike as it is with all the things we know work in it, which are mainly ergonomic and other like sort of reliability factors you need to actually achieve a successful 24, and then bring its speed up using, almost other people's advancements in the last 15 years.
Very good. All right, and I would be remiss here in talking about the little overzealous if I didn't tell everyone that Ben Goodall has an amazing, and Trisled has an amazing YouTube channel themselves, where Ben lays out a lot of very entertaining stuff. And most recently, Ben, you have, is it a 3-part series, I think, about the overzealous and the most recent build. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's nearly an hour and a half of content. So make time for it if you're
a cup of tea.
Yeah, make a cup of tea if you're interested in this. Really, what I tried to capture in the 3-part series was just basically, I guess, how almost unprofessional the act of setting world records with human-powered vehicles is. How it's really just about tinkering and making things work. So it's a bit of a departure from some of the stuff I normally have in my channel about custom builds and making things just right for customers and that kind of thing, and more just showing how you literally just chop things up and put them back together again until they work, and you rely on data and information from your team to decide what you're going to do to the vehicle, and you don't hold back. There are literally times when Little Overzealous was chopped in half and welded back together again through getting this ready, in order to get everything just right, so Aidan fitted just right inside it, which is actually, for Jono and I, a real holiday from our normal work, where there are a lot of standards that you have to adhere to build stuff for customers. This is almost like art, really. You can be a lot more expressive about it, and you don't have to doubt yourself. You can just get stuff done and make it right. So I guess that's probably what we really enjoy about these little runs and attempts and things.
In some ways, it was like, oh yeah, this is what we did 15 years ago. That's right.
Shit.
Yeah, we did everything.
I think that really points out the amazing experience that you two bring to the racing scene here. This, as Ben said earlier, it's not your first rodeo. So there's experimental parts. You're cutting it apart, but you're always relying on the many years of doing just that, and I'm sure that came to fruition, obviously, here in this past weekend in the race. And let's go ahead and start talking about that. Aidan, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what happened. What came before the race? First of all, tell us a little about your racing history. You didn't just jump into this HPV for the first time start racing. You have had some racing experience. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I've been racing HPVs with the Prix series, which we have in South Australia and Victoria, since about 2010 when I started high school, and basically done that every year since then. So going on 15 years of HPV experience there, and it was actually through racing HPVs that I got into racing bikes as well, mountain bikes, road bikes, and all sorts in between. So yeah, I've been doing getting more and more into cycling over the years and getting more and more into racing. And I guess probably about 5 years ago, racing also evolved into ultra distance racing as well, doing an event called Race of a Rock in South Australia here, which was about a 11-day race, which I guess was the start of my, I'd say, endurance base of riding.
So that's, and when we say endurance, we're mostly talking about what, 6, 12, 24-hour types of racing?
I'd say beyond the 12 hours.
Beyond 12. Yeah. Listen, I'm talking to the guy who just hit the record for 24 hours. So when I say 6 hours, that's just an afternoon ride for you.
Yeah, well, I guess the biggest race that I've done is actually the Tour Divide across from Canada to Mexico. So that was 15 days of racing. So 24 hours feels like a short little crit race in comparison to that, really. But yeah, a bit different there. So
Tell me about your preparations.
Yeah, so obviously I got the message from Ben. It was about 3.5 months or so before the attempt. So not a huge amount of time to get started with it, but sort of jumped right on in and got myself borrowed a mate's indoor recumbent trainer, which is the first time in probably 5 years I've actually ridden indoors. So I was actually getting serious about that, and essentially got a coach to set up a proper training plan for it, and did about 3 months of proper structured training, which is a rarity for me. Coupling that in with commuting to work on the bike all the time as well. So I was probably doing between 20 and 25-hour weeks for the intense periods of it. Mostly just at pretty low efforts, just zone 2 style training. But that was sort of a physical training into there, and that's probably where a lot of the human developments have come a long way for this sort of stuff, is the physiological understandings of how we can train for these events and how to best eke out performance from somebody. Coupling that with some nutrition things, and sort of really I was incorporating a lot of nutrition training into my training stuff as well to really optimize the entire body functions. Mentally wise, is not too much more that I really had to do. I'd obviously had some pretty good experience with sleep deprivation from the ultra racing that I've done, and I've done a few rides through the night before, so I know what sort of feelings I'd be going through at 2 or 4 a.m. in the morning, and sort of what highs and lows you're going to experience.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, Aidan, with regards, this isn't really preparation, but in talking with some of the other racers for this event, they seem to be somewhat in awe of you and claim that you have somewhat of a endurance racing gene, seemingly born to be able to do this. Do you think that you have some advantage genetically?
Not that I've ever come across before, but I don't know. I'm the only one from my family that sort of is into this sort of stuff. So it's hard to say if it's fully in the genes there, but it does appear that I've taken it a bit like duck to water.
Great. That was an impossible question to answer. Thank you for giving it an attempt. All right, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and jump to your amazing race. We've been dancing all around it. So you've had a few days now to rest up a bit and reflect back. And so I'd love for you to be able to tell us the story.
We'll start with the day before, I guess, which was spent at Jono's place, getting some last minute prep done on the bike, making sure everything was in order. Making sure the final body preparations were all good, and attempting to get a good night's sleep, which I'd set myself a hard bedtime, which I definitely went straight past. So then morning of, it's a nice early start to drive across to the track. I had a friend of mine, another Jono, but not this Jono, who was kindly driving me. So I was able to have a little nap in the car along the way. Got to the track, and it was all pretty calm stations. We knew the bike was pretty much all set from the night before. So it was just a case of we had a little short wait out the front of the venue before everyone arrived, before we could get let in. So it was, the hardest part there was trying to stay seated and keep off my legs a bit, just to keep them a bit fresher. Got inside there. First thing I saw as we drove onto the track was about 15 kangaroos on the side of a track. So that was a little bit of a warning for later on. So the setup, we got there, and again, it was a struggle not to dive in and try and help everybody to set all the tents and everything up. They're all telling me to, no, sit down, don't do anything, you got to rest. So I felt a little bit guilty just sitting around doing not much, watching everyone else do the work in the morning. But yeah, everyone was more than happy to, and everything seemed to go up nice and quickly. And before we knew it, I was having to get changed, get ready, get all strapped up, and get ready to jump in the bike. So had a few things I needed to make sure I was ready on. There's some taping spots needed just to prevent any rub points. So made sure I just was going through the checklist with all that. Got all the photos done we needed beforehand, and then we were about to set off to do a little sighting lap around the course. And I think it was probably like 11:15 that we were ready to do that. Everything I think had been double checked on the bike, and we set off. We had a little feed vehicle with Lockie inside of it, and we figured on that sighting lap we were going to do a few little bottle practices with some hand ups for refueling. So I think for half a lap or more we were just passing a bottle back and forth between us, so that was actually really helpful for later. Everything felt really good on that run, that little one lap. So rolled on up, and then basically it was just let's get ready to go. So we backed us up onto the start line, and at 11:11 a.m. we got rolling. So yeah, just started away from there. Had to pretty consciously take off and not just smash some pedals. Had to stick to our plan. We had a pretty solid power output plan of what we're going to try and stick to for pretty much the whole time. So yeah, got out there, took probably a good half a lap to slowly wind it up to cruising speed. But yeah, everything was feeling really nice out there. The first hour sort of went by and was probably a little bit above target in power, and the speed was a bit higher than we expected as well for the same power, which was promising to see. And I think it was about an hour and a half in is when I had the first bit of company join me on the track, because we had obviously Kyle and Andrew also attempting 24-hour attempts. So it was nice to finally see somebody else out there, but we were still just sticking to our schedule and my power numbers and all that. So to give a quick idea, I was aiming for 160 watts average, but I think the first hour was 175, and then maybe crept up to 180 in the second hour. But still, just trying to. The heart rate numbers were looking bang on what we expected, so I wasn't too worried that it was a little bit above. But yeah, we just had to try and just make sure we kept an eye and make sure the heart rate didn't start creeping. It definitely was difficult to maintain that restraint, because once Andrew got out there, he very quickly went out with a bit of a faster strategy, I think, and started passing me every 40 minutes or so, which means he was going an extra 5k an hour faster. So it definitely took a little bit of restraint to not just try and follow and keep him in sight. So we knew we had to stick to our plan because 24 hours was a long time, and if you get carried away in the first couple of hours, you won't know about it until it's too late. I think the first little hiccup we sort of came across was about 3 to 4 hours in. I started realizing we didn't quite get the headrest fit just right, and I was actually having to hold my head up too much to be able to see out of the front window as much as I needed, because we were experiencing a fair bit of a gusty conditions out there, and the vehicle was getting blown across the track quite a bit, which it very much enjoyed, and it was quite fast in those conditions, but it was requiring a fair bit more mental load to keep it on control and inside the lane. Also had a little bit of a waste management blowout in the first few hours. So
oh, please do tell.
So we thought of everything that we were out there. So obviously 24 hours you can't get through there without a bathroom break. So we were running a little external catheter, just like what divers and whatnot might use. So had a little bit of a malfunction of one of those. So at 4 hours in, when we were planning our first resupply of bottles, we decided rather than doing a rolling resupply, I'd actually do a stationary stop, and we would fix a few things at once. So I could get a quick little fresh change, a little wash up, and fresh install, and then also fix up that headrest and put a bit more foam under there. And that was really efficient. Only took us 4 minutes 20 seconds, and I was back out on the road again. The only next sort of event of note was one lap. Once it was dark, I was going around one of the corners, and I could see an extra bright light shining back at me, and then smelt the smell of burning fairing, and it turned out that Andrew had actually collected a kangaroo, one of those pesky kangaroos that was hanging around so much. He'd collected that and actually rolled over onto the inside of a track. Luckily, he was all good, and I think he got himself out of the vehicle and got back in and finished off the lap, and just got everything checked over, but was back on the road in no time and overtaking me just as quickly as ever.
We did have a chance to talk to Andrew about that, which, honestly speaking, when I went to think about interviewing the guys on a 24-hour endurance HPV event, smashing into a kangaroo during the event was not on my bingo card. I just wasn't even thinking about that. So this, that's an unexpected thing. But luckily, this didn't happen to you.
No. There were a couple of close calls, though. There was a couple of times where a kangaroo jumped across in front of me. He was probably 100 meters, 200 meters in front, and sitting up on the high side of the bank, just waiting to jump back across, as they always do. But luckily, stayed away from me. Unfortunately, Andrew managed to have not one but two roos jump in front of him over the weekend. So, he had some real bad luck there. Whereas I believe both Kyle and myself were clear. About 1 a.m. We did a planned proper pit stop at that point. And Jono was able to do I think we did a rear wheel change, just to make sure that the tyre wear wasn't going to come to catch us out at the end of the race. And also managed to fix up a few things inside the track. We had some electronic telemetry things going on inside of there which weren't quite talking, so I was able to reset all that. The food pouch was starting to hang off the side of the wall a little bit, so we could get that patched up, and I was able to do another change of clothes. They gave me a sponge bath, so really freshen up there, brush my teeth. Had some real food into me as well. Jumped back out into I got some fresh taping onto me as well, because some of that was a little bit peeling off or not quite right. Jumped back out there. It was about 2 a.m. We had some weather come back in, so it was a quick little rain misting, I'll call it. There really wasn't much in it, but enough to wet the screen and potentially cause a little bit of fogging. But I was still able to see pretty good from the amount that we had. But with that weather change, the wind gusts really came back in really strong, and that was probably the sketchiest moment of the entire time. It was also the very first time that I actually got to overtake the others, because it seemed like they'd both fallen off the pace to what they were doing earlier in the day. I think as that wind sort of started picking up again, Lil Zealous really started to sail in it quite nicely, and I think maybe they were either struggling physically or the vehicle wasn't doing quite so good in that condition at the time. But I was halfway through my first overtake of the whole event, 15 hours in, and wind gust hit me from a left and then from a right, basically half a second later. And I think I was on the outside of Kyle, and suddenly way up on two wheels, feeling like I was about to get thrown across the front of him. So that was a pretty huge spike of adrenaline, and heart rate suddenly jumped up to 150 beats a minute. and suddenly I was going 65k an hour, and way too fast for what I should be doing. So that definitely woke me up, and from there on, I was basically white knuckle gripping the steering wheel to keep it in check in those gusts of wind. Those wind gusts, they were a bit unrelenting for the next few hours. We were probably getting, I think, 50 or 60k hour gusts. So it'd really blow your sort of a full lane's width across the track, and you just kind of, once I wasn't beside somebody, you're able to sort of let it take you across a bit, because we're on a 4-lane wide track there. Granted, the final 2 lanes were on some pretty steep banking, but you were able to really let it push you across a bit and go with the wind gust and just bring it back slowly. It would have been a couple of hours after that I think I noticed Andrew on the side of a track. And I think he was in a bit of a waze and trying to have a sleep in the vehicle. I think I found out later. I think it was not long after that he had to pull the pin, which is a bit unfortunate. You really hope everyone can make it to the end at least, but that does happen sometimes in these ones. He gave a real solid crack and was bloody quick at the start, and he's going to hopefully walk away with the 12-hour world record there from that, which is pretty impressive when you can get that 12-hour by such a margin, even with hitting a kangaroo and rolling the trike in the middle of that is pretty impressive.
I mean, certainly he's going to get the record for the quickest 12-hour whilst hitting a kangaroo. That record, I think, has fallen without a doubt.
Yeah, he's got that one sewn up for sure.
All right, so let's get to the towards the end of the race. The other fellas in talking with me remarked, and I'm sure Jono and Ben are going to agree, that something happened in the last couple of hours with you, Aidan, that just had everyone's jaw on the ground. Like, not only were you just churning along, hitting those pedals, something like happened and you became unexpectedly stronger. So tell us about the last couple hours and the finish, if you would.
Yeah, so it was probably about 3.5 hours to go. I think it would have been daybreak had just happened. And obviously we know we're getting towards the end of the effort there. And Luke called me up on the phone and basically was saying, we only got a few hours to go now. We've hit the marks all the way to here perfectly. Like, we've paced it exactly how we wanted to. What you do from here, basically, pacing anymore is not so critical. You can open it up a little bit more. Just, don't kill yourself. You still got 3 hours or whatever to go to the finish. Let it open up a bit and just don't cramp. The wind conditions felt like they just ended up perfect. It wasn't so gusty at that time of morning. It was just a steady wind, and Lils Ellis was still feeling exactly as it did on the first lap, just perfectly smooth. So I just sort of started to, didn't even consciously really wind it up too much, but a couple of laps later it sort of started to feel, and next thing I looked down and the speedo's showing me 60k an hour. Another couple of laps later, 62k an hour. It's just gradually crept up a little bit there. And then we were in talks, and we knew that Kyle was quite close. Was actually still, I think, just in front of me on time at that point. And we knew whatever I did in those final few hours, Kyle was going to have to try and match if he wanted to better the 24 mark that I was going to set, because we were pretty confident at that point that I was going to make it past the existing record, and it's just going to be what we could do after that. We knew he was going to have to match it, and he broke the, I think it was 1,000 kilometer mark and then it probably was 2 hours to go that he continued on from that. And I kind of just knew it was me versus him to that point, which was, I definitely like to have a good challenge in there. And yeah, couldn't even see him on the track, and I wasn't getting live updates of what sort of lap times he was setting versus what I was doing, but it was just a case of each lap I'd just try and hold. There was past the pits, you'd get a bit of a tailwind, and the track could sort of just go up by an extra 3 or 4k an hour there, and then I'd sort of just try and hold a little bit higher speed into the headwind, and the next lap it would go up a little bit faster, and I'd hold that little bit higher speed into the next headwind. And yeah, next thing we knew, that we were just running around there going 70 plus k an hour down in the tailwind, and then doing average laps of 67 to 69 k's an hour. And I knew that was unsustainable to the end. But it got to the point where we did enough that it pretty much became mathematically very, very difficult for Kyle to get to the finish as well, to be able to match that pace. And at that point, I think he pulled the pin when I had an hour and a half to go. And from there on, I could back it off to what I could hold to definitely get to the finish and just try and set the highest mark I possibly could. So I think we held 60k an hour to the finish from there. And yeah.
That is
pretty much
amazing. It. So actually, I mean, that competition with Kyle really contributed, it seems, to the numbers you were able to put up, yeah?
Yeah, definitely having, if it was just me out there and we knew that, I was going to be in front of a record, I'm pretty sure maybe I would have lifted to, maybe up to 60 or 57 k's an hour for the last few hours. But I don't think it would have been anywhere near as close to the speeds we started clocking towards the end there. Just having that extra friendly competition right at the end there.
All right. Well, speaking of friendly, I'm guessing when you finally got to the finish, you saw some friendly faces there of the rest of your team. So tell us about the pulling in, that last lap and pulling in. What was that like? Yeah,
so I guess a few laps, it's probably half hour to go. The first friendly face popped out of nowhere as Ben made his first appearance of the weekend, which was a slightly interesting moment because the wind gust had definitely come back, and right at the point where the wind gust first hits you and going past the pits is right where Ben was standing and stepped out to give me a big wave. And I was a little bit of a clenched moment inside of there going, don't take him out with a wind gust or something. But going across those last few lines, and the guys were writing up some signs and stuff to show me on the last few bits and basically give me an archway to ride through every second lap. It was pretty cool moments. You see that once every 5 minutes. So when you come past, so you got plenty of time out there still to process everything while you're going along a bit there. And at that point in this race, it was pretty clear that we had achieved what we'd achieved there. And then pulling into the finish after the final warm down lap. It was a pretty special moment, I guess. Being able to thank the whole team for all their efforts over the whole weekend, because I'd only actually really seen them for maybe 20 minutes tops, and that was me barely cognitive and just asking for a little bit more water or to get this or get that, and not really actually being able to interact properly with them. So seeing them all at the finish there after everything they'd done for me that weekend to get the whole team across the line there was it's quite nice.
Very, very nice. All right, so guys, let's finish up with Ben and Jono. If you could briefly tell us what you thought at the end there as well when you saw Aiden pass the finish line, knowing he had the record and that all your efforts actually paid off. Ben, tell us, if you would, your thoughts on his race, and then Jono, I'd like to hear yours.
Yeah, look, first of all, I'd just like to, point out that this has been a real, triumph in, my personal development around team building and leadership, because as Aidan pointed out, I did myself out of a job for the weekend. I wasn't even there until the end. And so I was getting updates from the guys. We even FaceTimed at one point, and accidentally, while I was on my afternoon bike ride with Beck, we actually had to chat with Aidan while he was riding, which was really lovely. And just, yeah, it's all happening. Well done, guys. And but anyway, to your question, I was getting updates. We're about 2 hours drive here from the track, so I sort of was getting ready to get in the car, and so I was still getting updates on the way down. And the staff at the proving ground kind of rushed me in time to sort of be there at the end and almost let Aidan run me over. And basically the whole way through it, I just didn't have a shadow of doubt, to be honest with you, Gary. This team, this rider, everything was in place. And I've been doing this all my adult life, and there are very few moments when you have that kind of certainty in this game. And so I was just basically really swimming in the euphoria of that certainty is probably how I would describe how it felt. So, yeah, amazing.
I guess I kind of had the first feeling of like the first finishing crossing the line of when Aidan actually surpassed the previous record, and it had been all really controlled. We'd done a pretty good job all weekend of making sure nothing went wrong and ticking off, really sort of structured, felt like a job. We're all doing our job right. And then I thought, oh, that's really nice. And then he just went faster and faster. And I just had to go and pack my tent up. No, this is enough for me. You finish so anyway. Rather than run out on the track and sort of slow him down, I just went and packed up. So then when he finally finished, it was a really amazing feeling. I think finally it could switch from the job is done to actually kind of acknowledge what he's done. Oh my God, this is the furthest someone's traveled in a day under their own power, ever. Sort of start to have that sink in, which is, it was really, really special.
Fantastic. All right, let's end up here with Aidan. A last couple of questions. Aidan, I know that after you finished the race, Ben had his cell phone camera out, and he was asking people various questions. Did a great job. He came up to you and started asking you a quick interview after that 24 hours of racing. I guess my question to you, Aidan, is what was physically more difficult for you, racing 24 hours and getting the record, or having to stand up next to Ben and answering questions after that?
Standing up actually wasn't too difficult at that point in time. If I was standing or I was sitting, I was fine, but the transition between either of those was excruciating.
Very good. All right. The last things then. So my understanding is these records are yet to be certified. This is how it works. It seems unquestionable at this point that it's in the bag, but they do need to be certified. So we'll wait for that, for the final record to come out. But what about the future here, guys? Aidan, do you plan on doing more 24-hour races in the future?
I definitely haven't locked any in yet, that's for sure. Yeah, I'm not chomping at the bit yet.
Not next weekend, for sure.
No. Oh, well, nah, not a 24-hour race, definitely not.
He's got some comms to go and get while he's got this fitness off the back of the 24,
All right, fellas, thank you so much. This has been really, really fun talking with you, learning more about that last weekend and the amazing accomplishments that you all worked together to achieve. So thanks for coming on the Laid Back Bike Report to tell everyone about that. Ben, I'll give you the last word here. Any final thoughts?
Obviously, gratitude, Gary. It's just been we've learned so much. It's actually probably what I really should say. And, we're product designers, and so much of what we're doing here is about pushing limits to learn what works and what doesn't work and how to create, I guess, products that people can enjoy that are human-powered. So pushing it to the limits where you learn, and we learned a shit ton. It's amazing. Yep. So back to work for us. Yeah, keep moving forward. That's it.
All right, super. Well, Ben, Jono, Aidan, thanks again for joining me today. Best of luck to all of you. We'll be watching in the future for any new racing that comes along. And thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.